Left is Huntington Hospital, and this is a very congested area. Going to hook a right, and his next street is going to be Orange Grove. This motorcyclist really trying to evade these officers.
Yeah, and this is an area that's pretty crowded. Obviously, Mark, you're very familiar with this area. It's somewhat close by where you live. So we know this area. We know it's really busy, and it's very dangerous. This, again, the motorcyclist is looking behind them, but what they don't realize is that they have a lot of eyes above them. And look at how fast, Mark, right there on Orange Grove, look how fast this motorcycle is going, because these are very gentle streets. They have the, very, calm community.
And we just got this update from our news desk that this is possibly stolen, is the information that we're getting, possibly a stolen motorcycle. And that's why they are in pursuit right now. As you are all joining us with this breaking coverage, high speeds, was on the freeway, was on the 210 through La Crescenta into Pasadena, now on city streets. He's somewhat made a bit of a U-turn right through that intersection. Unclear if that was a green for him or a red light, but now crossing the freeway again. That would have been the 134 or the 210. And now going north, this is Orange Grove. The Rose Bowl would be to your left, and this kind of wraps around Orange Grove. It kind of makes a bend and then parallels the 210 freeway. So we'll have to see what he will encounter here. He's going to come up on Fair Oaks in just a bit. A lot of traffic, a lot of intersections.
I'm not quite sure which one I'd rather this suspect be on, the freeway or surface streets, because I feel like when you're on a motorcycle, it makes it very hard for law enforcement. I don't know if you can even do the spike strips as well, because it really does put that suspect in quite a bit of danger.
Yeah, likely not.
No,
that is Fair Oaks right there that he just crossed, and this is going to be a very congested area. Orange Grove. At times it's a wide street, but right here, if he stays on this, you're going to notice it kind of narrows down. It's a little bit more compact. There's a lot of stop signs, a lot of lights. So we'll have to see here if he stays on this part of the road.
Yeah, and joining us right now on the phone, Mark, is Bruce Thomas, our law enforcement expert. Bruce, you're always Johnny on the spot. You come and help us and kind of let us know what law enforcement is thinking, trying to determine when they are pursuing a suspect. Tell us a little bit about when you're pursuing a motorcycle suspect.
We don't have a lot of motorcycle pursuits. The thing about those type of pursuits, they're just so inherently dangerous, not only for the suspect, but also for the innocent motorists driving around them and for law enforcement officers trying to pursue the motorcycle.
Yeah, no doubt. And you do see this motorcyclist. He's, I'm assuming it's a male, but looking over his shoulder, which again, that just seems kind of incredible, because you don't lose your balance when you're looking behind you. And if this motorcycle was in fact stolen, they obviously know how to drive a motorcycle, because they're not the easiest things to maneuver as well.
Oh, certainly.
No, not at all. This rider and suspect has some skills about driving the motorcycle, weaving in and out of traffic, going at the high rates of speeds that will make the assumption he is going at. What law enforcement is going to do is just go back into a tracking mode, hopefully have a helicopter that can monitor and get the license plate of the motorcycle and wait for the terminus, the end of this chase, when this guy goes home.
Yeah, and it's not as though, Mark, you can sort of talk to the person. Many times law enforcement, they'll be able to contact the person if they have an idea who that suspect is. They'll be able to contact the person and talk to them and negotiate with them to try to pull over and give up. But Bruce, what kind of tools do law enforcement have to try to negotiate with this pursuit suspect?
Well, the one thing you lose is pit maneuvers, spike strips. Those things are now out of play because the motorcyclist is just driving at such a high rate of speed. So all you really can do is just kind of sit back and monitor. Hopefully this person slows down and is not driving like we've seen from Air 7 HD, wrong side of the road, center medium, and weaving in and out of traffic.
And Bruce, one thing to point out here is that it's hard to tell, but he has not come to a stop at any intersection. So I got to assume that he's been blowing through some red lights. This looks like this would be another, and he may make a right there on Allen. Very familiar with this area. This is going to come down to, going to pass Las Lunas and then Villa Street and right back towards the 210 freeway here on the east side of Pasadena, but he seems to be just blowing through every single intersection that he comes to right here. And this is, I think, going to be Villa Street.
Yeah, East Villa Street, Mark. And again, I'm sort of wondering, Bruce, you can answer the question, what would be a better location for this pursuit suspect? City streets or the freeway? We know the 210 freeway, that's a pretty wide open freeway. That's one of those freeways that it rarely gets jammed up.
You know, the freeway is obviously easier because you don't have the intersections, the blind driveways where people may pull out. You can kind of see what's in front of you and where you're going. Obviously, the speeds are a little higher on the freeway, but on surface streets, it's just so inherently dangerous. And as a watch commander, I can guarantee that they've canceled the pursuit, and now they're just saying, you know what, we're going to monitor via helicopter. We'll put it out as much as we can, but I don't want units involved in this.
Yeah, this is really concerning. Knowing that it's on those surface streets. This is going to be coming up to Altadena Drive. This is going to be his next intersection here on Villa Street. He just passed a fire station on his right, and then this is the corner of Altadena Drive. This would take him right back to the 210 freeway. We'll have to see if he stays on surface streets or gets right back on.
Yeah, I'm again
on surface streets, so this is going to take him a little bit further south of the freeway now.
Yeah, actually, Mark, I was saying before that it seems like the 210 usually is pretty clear, but it has some traffic on it right now. Again, we're seeing this driver on North Altadena Drive. Bruce, if the watch commander decides that this pursuit is just too dangerous to continue and they call off the pursuit, why does it seem like this motorcyclist is still driving at erratic speeds and fashion?
You know, it's an interesting question because having talked to suspects that I've chased or been involved in as a watch commander, they just feel that they're trying to get away from what at that time? It was something in their mind that said, hey, I'm being chased. But you're not being chased anymore. So it's just the freedom and wanting of the freedom, I guess.
Yeah, and again, we see this suspect just kind of winding through this area. But now I'm going to see him when you see big, large intersections, you sort of hold your breath a little bit. But again, this area you have a lot of freedom on these roads. There's not a lot of congestion right now.
And now back eastbound on Colorado. So essentially from when we first came on air, he's kind of made a big loop. If he stays in this direction, he would go right back, roughly, 3 to 4 miles away, but back to where he was essentially when we came on air here with this breaking coverage. Again, we are dipping in here to ABC7 and streaming live with this motorcycle pursuit that started, at least when we caught on to it, that was in like the La Crescenta area and now right in the heart of Pasadena. And Colleen, if he continues straight here, it's going to go right into Old Town Pasadena. Lots of shoppers. You were mentioning that it looks pretty quiet right now.
Yeah.
Anytime that you go into Old Town Pasadena, you're going to have more cars, more people walking around. They have those intersections that are like the 4-way cross.
Right.
So that is super concerning. Would
Plus
have come up.
lunchtime as well.
Yeah,
We know
exactly.
that some cities do a really great job with lunches, and Pasadena is one of those cities, and it gets very busy over the lunchtime hour. And again, people are not necessarily knowing that there is a pursuit taking place because you do not see any law enforcement walking. You see somebody walking in front, but again, you see this person now, they're stopping. So it almost looks like they're now trying to follow the rules of the road. Bruce, again, this person is still taking some risks.
Oh, yeah, definitely they are. And a question people might ask is, well, why not have some motorcycle officers chase him that they can weave in and out of traffic? Well, having a motor officer in a pursuit is just so inherently dangerous for that motorcycle officer that most times they're not even allowed to be in the pursuit.
Yeah, it seems like I would agree too, Mark.
Right here, just passing Pasadena City College on the lower side of your screen. So he's passing a lot of landmarks that people are going to be familiar with here in Pasadena. Of course, you say Colorado Boulevard, there's nothing more central than that. And from what we've seen, he's willing to do anything to get away. That being said, again, sorry if this is reiterating, now in tracking mode, only the chopper from Pasadena Police now tracking this motorcycle. Now, that being said, that means there's not going to be an officer right behind this guy, but they're going to know where he is. They're still following him. They want to get him, but they don't want to escalate the situation. Bruce, is that a fair assessment that, you know, they don't want those lights and sirens right behind the guy to agitate him?
Yeah, Mark, that is 100% true statement, because the more you put pressure on this driver, we've already seen what he's doing not being chased. If he now were to see multiple units behind him with lights and siren, that may pressure him into even doing more unsafe maneuvers.
Yeah, and again, I'm watching this motorcycle rider and, you know, going right in between cars and just kind of going through the intersections. I'm not quite sure if that was a red light or if it was a green one. But again, I'm thinking this, you know, as many of us know this area, I'm thinking this motorcycle rider does not necessarily know this area because they're just driving in such an unusual manner. It looks like, are they about to get onto a freeway, or is this... Mark, is this,
that
was
like
the freeway
on-ramp.
on-ramp to the 210?
Yep, back on the 210 freeway. He got on there at Maple Street, and he's back on the freeway. And again, Bruce, weigh those options for us when it comes to a pursuit, especially with a motorcycle. Would you prefer it being on a freeway versus city streets, surface streets?
You know, personally, as a watch commander, I would feel more comfortable in a pursuit on the freeway, because it's basically one direction,
sure,
multiple lanes, but traffic is pretty stagnant, meaning you're not going to have vehicles turning in front of you or trying to merge.
I know.
So in that case, a freeway would work.
It always jams up right here at Lake Avenue. There's the junction where the 210 continues onto the 210, but it's you know, it's more like an interchange because it goes up north towards La Cañada and La Crescenta. So there's always a jam up right here. So the traffic's slowing down a bit, especially on the 2 to 3 right lanes. And he's staying in those lanes right now. Makes you wonder, is he going to go back onto the 210 further westbound, which would take him up to La Cañada, just passing Lake Avenue right there. If he stays to the left of this coming interchange, it would then transfer on to the 134 westbound, come right back into Eagle Rock and Glendale.
Right. And then again, Bruce, I don't know how, I'm sure you probably have a better understanding. I know law enforcement, they certainly can talk through their earpieces and helmets, but I don't think, are a lot of helmets, you know, just normal civilian helmets? Because this person does have a helmet. So if they did steal this motorcycle, maybe the helmet was left on it with the keys. I mean, a lot of people, it's just a crime of opportunity. But this suspect certainly knows how to shift the gears. You can watch him. It's somewhat tricky to know how to ride a motorcycle. If you haven't never driven one, it's not quite so easy where you just start up the motorcycle. It's not like a moped, right, Bruce?
No, that's correct, Colleen. I mean, when you steal a car, it's pretty easy. Put on the gas, put on the brake, turn the steering wheel, drive. But a motorcycle is a lot more difficult to do. What's unique about this motorcycle is there's an additional helmet on the bike, which means we believe there's probably a little more than just a stolen motorcycle in this case.
Yeah. Again, we're trying to effort all those details. As you know, whenever there's a pursuit happening and we're trying to call the law enforcement jurisdiction who's behind it, they're so busy, and then we don't get a lot of updates. But we certainly will update the details as soon as we find out, because it's sort of like a little bit of a drip, like a faucet. There's a drip information. And again, as we find out more, we certainly share it with you.
Getting word here that CHP is now joining the chase here shortly is the latest update that we have, and that they are sending their chopper and ground units. So initially we had Pasadena PD, their chopper involved in this pursuit, at least in tracking mode. Now California Highway Patrol, according to our desk, going to be getting involved in this pursuit and maybe re-engaging Bruce with ground units. And that's something that we do see from time to time. It passes jurisdictions. You have different agencies joining in. Is that the case?
Yeah, in this case, you're on the freeway now, and CHP is the primary agency for the freeways. And so if there's a pursuit on the freeway or a pursuit suspect, CHP will engage. They have some different rules of engagement, and we're going to see some units probably behind this guy very, very shortly.
I'm also wondering, Bruce, the CHP just launched a whole new effort to reduce reckless driving on our freeways. And I've been seeing them, these new Dodge Durangos. They're but they're not doing one of their Dodges. They're doing one of their true black and white. So
that's
now the
Glendale
suspect
right there.
knows.
That was Glendale police that was pursuing, which does make sense because when we came on air,
Right.
La Crescenta is part of Glendale. And so that may have been one of the initial officers. Sorry to jump in there.
Colleen, to your point, there's a lot of controversy about those Durangos. People say, well, it's entrapment. No, the purpose of those vehicles is to catch aggressive drivers in certain cars that are weaving in and out, passing. It's more of a safety thing than anything else.
Yeah, well, the CHP, they get thousands of phone calls a day on reckless drivers. So again, it leads you to believe that they're going to try to do anything they can to keep the roads safe. I drive quite a bit, and I have been seeing those Durangos, and they really are very low profile. You don't realize it's a law enforcement vehicle until you really look at it and you go, oh, that's one of those new CHP.
Mm-hmm.
They have quite a few that they're sending out on the road. And again, Mark, you were talking about it, Glendale police. So it is interesting, Bruce. I always find it interesting. Some jurisdictions, they don't play well with others. The CHP and, not every police department, they don't have always the best relationship. But through the years, it does seem like everyone has been starting to fall on the same page where they're better as a team. Would you agree?
I think we'll call it the cohesiveness of the unit, of the agencies, has gotten much better. They all have mutual aid where they help each other out. And at the end of the day, the job is for the safety of the public, to reduce crime, to reduce these type of incidents. So, yeah, they are playing much better in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Right now on the 134, we talked about his options a while ago. He just passed through the Eagle Rock area. There's been no exit here, kind of between Figueroa and Harvey. There's not really any options to get off the freeway. So right now on the 134 westbound, I believe right there to the right would have been an option to take the 2 freeway on his right, and he is staying here on the 134. This is going to take him right into the heart of Glendale. New information just coming in that the Glendale PD chopper now asking CHP to take over the pursuit. We can tell you may be able to tell there are no plates on the motorcycle, and an update here for perhaps why they're following this guy. Initial information was potentially that it was stolen.
Mark, this is one of those undercover.
Oh, right there, you're right.
There.
Black SUV. Potentially the want here, was speed and the actions of this motorcyclist. And right to your point, Colleen, that officer, the unmarked black SUV right there to the left of this driver or the motorcyclist. Bruce, what can they do in that point? It seems rare when they get in front of the motorcyclist.
Yeah, very, very rarely will you see that unless they're trying to force him to slow down. But typically, it's not a maneuver that is taught, nor is it a new maneuver that officers will do. They're more inclined to stay behind and follow. And like Colleen was saying, this appears that it is one of those unmarked vehicles, whether it is one of the CHP ones or another agency. We just don't know yet. I don't know if there's 7HD can pull in.
Yeah, that's a tight turn. This is Glendale Avenue he just got off on, and anyone who drives this freeway, they know it is a super tight turn, and I think he was going just a bit too fast than he realized for that exit. Almost lost it. Back on. It looks like almost like the motorcycle stalled there for a moment, and he is moving again.
By the way, those undercover cop cars or cruisers, they've gotten much more undercover, because you used to see those Crown Vics and they stuck out like a sore thumb. They might not have the black and white, but now I think that cruiser got in front of him because the motorcyclist didn't realize it was a cruiser. But again, now that cruiser is behind him, the unmarked one, and it does up the ante when you start seeing how close a contact they came. Now, Bruce, I'm not sure if you could see this in real time, but this pursuit has now taken on a new urgent feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're back on the city streets, and his speeds have picked up, and the vehicles that are chasing him now are staying on this pursuit, and they are closing the distance. So they may know something more about this suspect more than just a possible stolen motorcycle.
Yeah, and again, right there on the
Oh,
curb, glad there's
goodness.
no pedestrians there, but on the curb, Jackson and Lexington in Glendale. So obviously on surface streets, I want to pull up some video that we have. This is actually from a neighbor of mine who took this video earlier. Yes, this pursuit has gone by my house, and that's when the motorcyclist was zipping right by on surface streets. At least in that shot, you saw police officers were not immediately in tow, but they have since re-engaged a lot closer.
Yeah, and it is so nerve-wracking. Again, we're watching this pursuit, and I'm very nervous for this pursuit suspect, really, because they are taking such extreme risks. But it shows you, Mark, everyone hears the police choppers overhead. Everyone hears the lights and sirens and sees them. So as people start looking at this, be aware.
Oh, man, seniors right there in the middle of the street. Now, about that point regarding seniors crossing and pedestrians, the fact that this is a motorcyclist, Bruce, clearly it's not a big, heavy utility vehicle. We've seen pursuits with vehicles like that can do a lot of damage. This being obviously a smaller vehicle on the road, how do you weigh that as far as the fact that it is a weapon out there, but the risk involved when you have a motorcyclist versus a car?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at, instead of a couple of 1,000 pounds, you're looking at a couple of 100 pounds for the motorcycle. However, it is still basically a missile, one that's driving at a high rate of speed, that can weave in and out. And so does that maybe cause some additional issues with pedestrians crossing? Yes. And also, they're a little more stealthy. They're not going to hear it or see it come up upon them.
Sure.
Yeah, and they come up so fast. But look right here, you can see that, boy, that undercover, that unmarked car is really taking some chances as well.
Yeah, they don't want to lose them, but might get pinned right here. That's the situation where the motorcyclist was able to evade a bit more. Lane splitting between those vehicles that at the red light. Still here in the Glendale area on the wrong side of the road, again through another intersection. I got to assume this is not far from the Glendale Galleria and the Americana. I'm not positive. Okay, they did just pass.
Yeah, they did just pass it. But again, you know, this is obviously near the ABC7 studios. It is just so highly dangerous. And again, we know that law enforcement, they naturally don't want to give up. But Bruce, at what point do you just say, you know, we're going to...
Risk versus reward.
Yeah, we're going to give up on this, because the suspect, I mean, it just doesn't look good for the suspect when they're driving this fast on these streets.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, basically what you have is you're chasing a stolen vehicle. Okay, what is a stolen vehicle? Well, that means you're taking the vehicle without the owner's consent, which is basically a misdemeanor crime, punishable in jail by up to a year and a $10,000 fine. Now, do they get arrested for that? No. They get arrested for grand theft auto in this case, or motorcycle, which is a felony crime. However, it's not prosecutable because they're not permanently depriving the owner of the vehicle.
It's always interesting how the law works, and like you just said, Mark, the risk versus the reward just for the suspect. Again, I don't know exactly what led up to this person, if they are in fact driving a stolen motorcycle. We don't exactly know.
That was the initial information, but again, the newest information was that it was speed and simply
erratically.
Yeah,
reckless.
driving erratically, the actions of the motorcyclist. And Bruce was speaking to the point of, you know, a couple 100 pounds, which is perhaps, you know, less dangerous to the public. Still, though, it's like a missile out there. But we have seen these pursuits with motorcyclists and really badly for the rider specifically.
Yeah.
It really increases the danger for them. If, God forbid, there is any collision, they lose control, this can end very badly for this motorcyclist. So officers certainly in pursuit want to bring this to a successful termination.
Yeah, you know, and Colleen was right on this. If SMHD pulls back, it was one of those brand new CHP undercover vehicles, and I call them undercover only because they don't have a light bar on top, but they do have a light package system throughout the body of the vehicle. And that's more inherently dangerous on a city street too, because people look and they don't see the familiar black and white vehicle.
Sure. And Bruce, can I ask you this question? The options, people may be watching here as we're dipping in to this breaking coverage and wondering, okay, bring this to an end, just stop the guy. Obviously more difficult when you have a motorcyclist. They can't do a pit maneuver. You mentioned not really an option to do spike strips. Is that correct? Do they have any options aside from simply following the guy?
They don't. The options are pretty minimal at this point. Could you use a spike strip? Yeah, you could. However, the motorcycle is so agile getting around that, it's difficult to deploy. But in this case, all you really can do is just kind of sit back and watch and wait and hopefully not spur the driver, in this case the suspect, to drive any more erratic and unsafe than they are.
I got to assume it's totally out of policy. Maybe this is a silly question. Totally out of policy to, if given the opportunity to, similar to a pit maneuver, go up and ram the guy, bump him over. Have you seen that? Is it allowed?
It's not allowed. Two, I'm sure it goes through every officer's mind, especially if you're sitting in traffic and this is going by you. You're like, well, just run them over. Just move them. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that as much as we'd like.
Yeah.
I like to.
Yeah.
I like that none of the other drivers on the road are getting involved, because sometimes we see that happen.
Well, a situation like this, likely these drivers don't even have an idea. He's coming up so quick. You could see the rate of speed, the difference that he's zooming by these cars. If you're driving, you got the radio on, you're dealing with other stuff. You don't even see this motorcyclist coming, and then probably after the fact realize, oh, that was a pursuit that just went by.
I know. I would love it if they would just almost go into tracking mode in a weird way, because the responding car that's right behind, and the sort of area, they keep narrowing the distance between. So the driver of that undercover unmarked vehicle, they are doing an incredible job of staying with this motorcycle rider, weaving in and out of traffic. They've been going on the other side of traffic too. So there's been a lot of risks being taken to pull over this motorcycle rider. And at some point, the community is going to be sort of, in jeopardy as this driver just continues to take such extreme risks. Yeah,
now into the Cypress Park area on San Fernando Road. So he's really covering some distance now. He's now out of Glendale. Of course, he's gone through La Cañada, La Crescenta, Pasadena, Eagle Rock. Kind of certainly getting some miles in, and now Cypress Park going to get closer, essentially, I think, to the 5 freeway down here. As he really gets some distance in with these officers in pursuit.
Bruce, what do you think's going?
I'm sorry, guys. If Air 7HC can pull out, I think CHP may have canceled their pursuit, because they were not in the frame of the picture, so they may have just realized, you know what, this isn't worth it. We're canceling it. We'll just keep the helicopter over him and try to get him. I'm sorry, Pauline.
You called it, though.
It's actually a great point, Bruce. And, we're getting information simultaneously and now hearing that may in fact be the case. But LAPD now add another agency to the mix. The LAPD chopper is now taking over overhead. So we've had Pasadena involved, Glendale, CHP. Now the LAPD is involved in this pursuit that is across multiple jurisdictions, and this guy just not wanting to stop.
No. Yeah, this suspect has a total wanton disregard for just pulling over and just giving up. It could be maybe in his criminal background that if he were to go to jail, there may be some enhancements. And speaking of the enhancements, a few years ago they put an enhancement on felony pursuits where it was a mandatory 2-year sentence. I don't know if that's still in effect or not, but the drivers are at least looking at that.
Interesting. That's very good to know. You always wonder, what's their motivation to stop or not stop, and whether or not they're aware of those repercussions and penalties for sure. This guy at times weaving in and out of the wrong direction of travel, making a right there North Broadway, Avenue 19 in Lincoln Heights, again blowing through one intersection after another. As we've been on the air now for just about 30 minutes, again breaking in with this pursuit coverage. I think the only time he's really come to a near stop was at an intersection where the cars were blocking. He had to lane split and kind of creep along. Aside from that, he is blowing through every single stop sign, every single intersection that he's come to, Colleen.
Yeah, he has. And again, I think it was that moment where he did do a stop at that intersection. It was when that unmarked police or CHP vehicle, it's in disguise almost, because so many people drive these large, dark SUVs. So I'm thinking at some point, like I said, I've seen them on the streets, and you do not notice that you think, is that a personal car driver that's chauffeuring someone, but again, this person is taking extreme risks. I have not seen that unmarked large SUV following, and now we know that the LAPD airship is now taking over lead to follow this motorcycle, tracking mode, trying to keep the community safe. Again, this motorcyclist must know they are being tracked, because they are not, you would think that once you think, okay, law enforcement has decided to give up, Bruce, it's sort of reasonable to believe that the driver would sort of stop making, risky moves?
You would think that as long as someone's not behind him, not hearing the lights, the siren, because you're not really going to hear the siren, because speed travels backwards, not forwards. Sound rather travels, backwards, not forwards. So you're going to see the lights. But in this case, that's not the issue. This guy or this suspect is just driving like a bat out of hell, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, we want to update our viewers right now. North Alameda, this has been now in the downtown area. If Air 7 can pull out just a bit to give us that perspective, this is in downtown Arcadia, and that's the 101 right there, where I believe that's the same freeway where we had some police activity earlier.
Yeah.
We told you about. So now there's multiple things going on in this specific area of downtown. Just to the left, he's going to be going towards, locations like City Hall and the Hall of Justice, right into the heart of downtown Los Angeles. As we watch that, we can also, intersection here with a crosswalk, people crossing through. We have some video, if you're just tuning in, of this pursuit on the right side of your screen. Going to kind of run through what we have seen so far. The 210 in Pasadena is essentially when we came on the air. So
Exactly.
He has been on the freeway at times and on surface streets, blowing through intersections, blowing through crosswalks. So we've been on this for the better part of 30 minutes. So the video on the right is what we have seen so far. The video on the left is live, and Colleen and Bruce Thomas on the phone with us. At least we can be thankful that we've seen no collisions up to this point.
We haven't, and we've only seen for one moment, as you're looking on the right side, you're watching video from this pursuit. On the left side, you're looking at live images, but we've only seen one true moment where this pursuit suspect got a little squirrely on the bike. They are handling this bike with expertise. It looks like Bruce Thomas, our law enforcement expert, always joining us on these pursuits. We really, your advice and your information invaluable. But again, you don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when this pursuit suspect's going to give up, but they keep sort of staying very close to Los Angeles, and they keep going through these very congested areas. They're not getting on the freeway, which a lot of times we see the pursuit suspects just go. They go into Ventura County, or they go south. But this person is staying here, and you look at going in through these intersections in downtown. Bruce, what are you thinking about? What do you think that law enforcement is trying to figure out now?
Well, they're trying to figure out, one, what kind of geographic area this suspect wants to be in. He's gone from the north part of LA County now to the downtown of Los Angeles. There are high-rise buildings. Maybe he's thinking he could pull into a garage. We've seen that before, and just ditch the bike and get away. But in this case, there doesn't seem to be a pattern yet. And that's one of the problems for law enforcement.
Yeah, certainly no way for him to hear us, and wouldn't want to give him, ideas of how to get away. But you are absolutely right that we've seen it before. If these pursuit suspects ever did want to get away, typically going into a parking garage, parking structure, that is a good way for them to evade officers. And he has plenty of them right now here in the downtown Los Angeles area. Right now, westbound on Cesar Chavez, kind of going in loops right now in the downtown Los Angeles area, kind of moving into the Chinatown area. Really putting a lot of people at risk and keeping law enforcement, honestly, on their toes, as we now have had multiple agencies involved. Wrong side of the road, here he goes, onto the sidewalk, and perhaps, as we were just saying, that may be into a parking structure.
Mark, great job giving him an idea to get in there.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I know.
Is
Again,
that Union Station? Is that part of Union Station? It's hard to tell.
it's very hard to tell,
Might just be an apartment complex.
but it's very
Wow.
large.
Yeah, I think that's one of those like Orsani massive.
That is the Da
complexes.
Vinci apartment complexes. We're getting confirmation. So not far from there, it's just up the road, the Da Vinci apartment complex. So be advised, if you're in this building, you're watching right now, a lot of units, lock your doors. This motorcyclist just went into an underground parking area of the Da Vinci apartment complex right here in downtown Los Angeles, right bordering the 110 freeway.
So you see it if you commute on the 110, you see the Da Vinci apartments right there. They're a fairly new development, and I'm sure a lot of areas where this person can just offload that bike and find a hiding spot.
Our viewers will remember back in 2014, this was part of the complex that went up in flames during construction just off the 110 freeway. They have since, of course, rebuilt this very large development, and the motorcyclist now choosing that as his getaway location. Going to be real interesting, Bruce, to see if officers decide to do any lockdown perimeter, secure this area. That's got to be a bit daunting. How do you even begin when you have so many entrances, so many exits for this guy to hide?
That is the question. You've got multiple entrances, multiple exits. You're looking at a manpower pool just to lock down the complex. That's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And we'll go with the risk rewards. Is it worth it in this case? And I'm going to say, as a watch commander, you know what? Bad guys 1, police 0.
I am just curious about how a lot of people are just in there minding their own business, having a lunch break. So many people work from home these days, and just to have all this police activity surrounding your environment and not having a clue of what's going on.
Now, over here to the right, not sure if our camera from Air 7 can see that, there were some officers that were stopped right there. Zoom in. There's an officer up there on the curb, another one that just pulled back. So they were focused on that entrance of the complex. I wasn't sure if that was the same entrance that he went into. Perhaps it was. Of course, we've been spinning around just a bit. But clearly officers are there. They're well aware that this is the location that the guy was last seen, and probably now weighing their options, as Bruce spoke to, as to did the bad guy win at this juncture? Do they remain on scene, or do they just call it quits and pull out?
Well, and also, Bruce, I'm thinking, we know that, like we were just talking about, this is an area that we saw a massive fire years ago, and so we know they have cameras located throughout. I'm wondering if law enforcement is trying to get a hold of the security footage right now to say, we need to see, because they're obviously going to have a lot of live cameras in all their garages just for safety of their tenants as well as security. So I'm wondering exactly, as you know, Bruce, all police work has gotten, it's never easy, but you're getting extra tools by having those cameras.
Yeah, and I happen to know in this complex, they do have a 24-hour live monitoring station, meaning they have security that doesn't monitor the cameras. So they might be contacting that security officer or that security office to see if they can see exactly which way the guy went in and where the guy went once he pulled into the garage.
Sure.
So then, having surveillance cameras is a great investigatory tool.
Okay, and we do have an update here. We are getting word that LAPD is now setting up a perimeter. A few units have arrived. Clearly, you can see one right there. So they are in the early stages here of setting up a perimeter. The LAPD is. That is a situation, Bruce, where it just takes more manpower. So they got to get these units in. They're going to make that investment. Here's the one thing. We were talking to the point that, hey, this guy could get away. But although there's a lot of property to cover, there are a lot of hiding spaces. He is otherwise enclosed into this property. So he's got to be in there somewhere. So maybe time is on their side if they want to get him.
Yeah, I mean, they'll set up a perimeter. They'll contain it. They'll eventually start a grid search in the sub-garage. The motorcyclist, once he ditches the helmet, do they have a description? Is it a male, white, black, Hispanic? And also the clothing. He may ditch some of the clothing too. So what you're looking for initially may change.
Yeah.
One thing to point out, and I think we alluded to it earlier, we were unaware throughout this entire pursuit coverage is if this guy was armed, if he had any weapons on him. That, of course, could escalate the situation during this search. I want to let our viewers know that we're going to be wrapping up our coverage here on ABC7. But, of course, we will monitor this situation. Going to keep you posted this afternoon on Eyewitness News at 3 p.m., giving you a recap now on the right side of your screen when this pursuit came to an end, right here as that motorcyclist went into the parking structure of the Da Vinci apartment complex in downtown Los Angeles. He has not been seen since. That was roughly 10 minutes ago. LAPD is setting up a perimeter. We'll keep you posted the very latest online, abc7.com, and this afternoon, 3 p.m. right here on Eyewitness News. And right now, back to regular programming.
This has been Eyewitness News with breaking news.